We were just talking about your book because no, I'm not going through a breakup, but I've gone through many breakups in the
Hmm.
past. This was the book that I wish I had had 15 years ago. So where were you
Oh,
15 years ago when I needed this book?
what a
Um,
compliment. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
yes, but
Yeah.
okay, this is the other thing. Someone super close to me has never been through a breakup and
Hmm.
is in an extremely rocky marriage, not necessarily knowing how to navigate exiting, and or maybe they won't ever exit because it seems like either martyrdom or like a penance to be paid for poor decision making back in the past. But I
Hmm.
was just saying, breakups, having a breakup, you talk about all the growth that you go through, and that person never has experienced that. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I think one of the great teachers of life is breakups, or what I call expired relationships. And people who have not had a lot of breakups or relationship experience, I just feel they just have less tree rings. Like how could it just like it's life? Like you can't read stuff in books and just go by information, you know?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm pulling out your book right now. So, like you said, you've written, is this your sixth book, correct?
Yeah, six.
Okay. So why did it take you again till now to write this one about breakups? Because your recent marriage, it wasn't your first breakup that you've had. So just curious why now was the
No.
time to write this one.
I've always wanted to write a book about breakups. You know, when you write a book, you have to ask yourself, like, is this worth all the trees? And is it worth, and also, why are you the person to write it? Why now? So I didn't want to just write something for the sake of writing something. And then I just recently had this revelation that we have this kind of like one color by numbers blanket for healing from breakups, but there are so many different types of breakups, and no one talks about all the different types of breakups. You know, we talk about all the love languages and all these other things. How come no one has talked about all the different types of breakups? And if your healing journey is going to be changed based on what you're going through. And so when I had that kind of moment, then I got fired up to write the book. And that's why it came out now and not, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I know. I'm sad about it, but I'm glad to have it in my hands now. I'm glad that listeners are hearing about it today. And I want to go back before we kind of dive a little bit deeper into your book. And I do want you to maybe just briefly overview the eight, but I want to talk about your Instagram handle name, and that's at
Mm,
Angry Therapist. Where did that
yeah.
name come from?
The Angry Therapist was the title of my Tumblr blog back in 2010
Okay.
when I got a divorce. Yeah, I started on Tumblr and I didn't think anyone would read it. I thought it was funny that a therapist was angry. Also, the happy therapist is not that interesting. And also, I was angry. I was angry because I wasn't happy. And so I wrote that blog for me and it kind of as a therapeutic tool to just kind of journal and document my divorce recovery rebirth. But then it caught on and I don't know. I guess people were kind of interested in especially a male therapist talking about his feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to know who you wrote this book for because, again, for me, I'm not necessarily going through a
Hmm.
breakup, but a lot of this resonated with me. And having taken especially the last 3 to 5 years of doing some self work and processing some things that happened in my past, to me, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is meeting me. I've gone through some of this. But who would you say your main target audience is with this?
Yeah. So I'm glad that you are not going through a breakup, but you got something from the book. That was my
Yeah.
goal. It's for anyone who still carries some breakup residue. It's for anyone who, because even though relationships are over, we still kind of like revisit things. Come up, we get activated in our current relationship because of what happened in the past. So it's a lot of that. Plus, if you're currently going through a breakup, obviously it's going to help you as well.
Yeah, and I felt like it was fitting because realistically, half of my listeners are going to get divorced or find themselves in a breakup at some point. And so I feel like this, again, is the book that I was looking for, and I'm so glad that we have now. But I want to talk about, I guess, more of your motivation to write. And you speak to people through your Instagram account all the time. But
Hmm.
again, going through a deeper look at why, again, now is the time.
Now it's well, you just said something kind of maybe alarming to your listeners because you said like flipping a coin, half are going to be going through a
Sure,
divorce or
that's
a
true. Do you
breakup.
want to go from there? Yeah, let's go there.
And so yes, that's a big number. And so there's a lot of people going through breakup/divorce. And I don't know when this is going to air, but January is kind of divorce month. It's breakup season right
It
now.
is. Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know.
And of course, a lot of people reevaluating their life, who
Mhm.
they're, living with, loving. But I think divorce, even though it still has stigma, millennials have started to scrape that stigma. I think the divorce rate is higher than ever, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think people are now having higher standards, non-negotiables, and they'd rather be single than being something that isn't honest or toxic.
Well, and I do wonder if that pendulum will swing backwards because you're right. People are understanding what you just said, but also we can teach our children to just be more, I guess, discerning before entering relationships. Like, do you think
Hmm.
that that pendulum will swing back? Oh, gosh, I can't talk. Swing back with our, I guess, shared stories with them.
Yeah, I think that pendulum is swinging. But just overall, it's swinging the
Mhm.
one way. I think it's going to come. I think there's also like kind of a big divide right now with men and women. There's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of rocks being turned over, a lot of, I mean, even like monogamy being on trial. There's so much happening. At the end of the day, it's kind of like customization. It's whatever works for you, you know?
Sure. I think you did say something. I'm going to devil's advocate and challenge you. You
Hmm.
said, gosh, I don't even remember your exact words, but I think divorce, I think it is sad. I think that we don't go into relationships, we don't go into marriage wanting to divorce. But you're right. There are circumstances that I think call to exit a relationship.
Hmm.
There is hesitation for me sometimes with people. Actually, curious to know your thoughts on this. Just saying, well, we just grew apart. You talk a lot about the drift in
Hmm.
relationships. And to
Hmm.
me, I'm like, is there space or there should be space to try and course correct that before
Yeah,
shutting the door?
of course. I don't think drift alone is enough to end a relationship. I actually think as a generation, we're giving up too soon. And maybe part of it is cultural as far as like on demand dating apps, swipe culture. So I don't know, maybe we believe that there's always something better.
Yeah.
But we do give up too soon. I think that when someone says divorce, I say congratulations as a way to not say what we usually say our parents have said, which is I'm sorry. But yes, we drift alone is not enough. We have to definitely stay in there, and I feel like we should do as much as we can, and we have to really be honest with ourselves. And then even at that, if the container of the relationship slash marriage is now making us break up with ourselves, then maybe that's a sign that the relationship has expired. But
Yes.
yeah, not because feelings have changed. Feelings are going to change. They're going to go up and down and sideways.
Oh, sure. I
Yeah.
do think that now more than ever, I mean, it's kind of like when you're choosing what to eat, you can just drive down the street and there's option after option.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that now, where you just kind of knew your community of, well, this guy lives here and this woman lives over here. Now
Hmm.
it's like, I have access to all of these people on social media. We think that we have access to them. And so our brains like don't know how to handle what's realistic for our lives, what we think would be better for us. Like you said, it's all emotional. It's
Hmm.
irrational and it shifts back and forth, not incessantly, but there are seasons where it's going to keep swinging back and forth. And I think that that is a challenge with the time that we, it's kind of like the Spider-Man with great power comes great responsibility. To me, I'm
Hmm.
like, we've been given so much with this access, and yet
Hmm.
there's great responsibility and awareness that we have to have that maybe we didn't prior.
Yeah, and the biggest problem with this is to build a relationship. I think Keanu Reeves says there's a difference between falling in love and having a relationship. And there's a lot of people falling in love, not a lot of people learning how to build the relationship,
Yeah.
learning how to repair ruptures, And so that requires reps. It's not just like something you read. You actually have to do it over and over. So people who check out too soon strip themselves of the reps required to just have more capacity and more tools in a relationship.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so two questions I want to get to before we maybe just briefly overview what the eight breakups are.
Hmm.
Um, these are, well, this one is for me personally. I'm curious to know if you believe in closure. Even
Mm-hmm.
20 years later, do we
Mm-hmm.
need to go back to that person and have those conversations that were left unsaid, or is that opening Pandora's box?
I think there's a misconception to closure. I don't believe that it's possible that everyone that we have shared a bed with, if that chapter can be fully closed. I have exes that I'm sure hate me, and I wish I could sit down with them and apologize for some things that
Yeah.
they will never come. So if I define closure as apology, explanation, conversation, coffee with someone. I don't have control over that. That may never happen. So then what does that mean? That that's never closed?
Mhm.
Closure to me is a bridge. It's creating a new experience. It's not forgetting because we'll never forget, but it's not allowing the past to define the present, or it's not allowing what happened to ripple into the relationship you're in now. So I don't, the word closure, it sounds so clean, like you're closing a chapter, which I don't
Mhm.
like about it, you know,
Mhm.
but I do think that nothing is ever closed.
I
It's part of
agree
our
with you.
story. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that closure, I used to think, oh, there could be some conversations had. Like, that's curious. I wonder why that happened. And it's like, what answer are you expecting to get that could be beneficial to the present? Maybe
Mm.
it's an answer you don't want to hear. Maybe it's an answer that unravels you. And to me, I'm like, no, heal with what information, what truth you have now, and continue to go forward. You don't necessarily need to go back because that just could also create like another fork that you don't want in life.
Yeah. I think the more accurate and healthier word is healing. So healing to me sounds healthy, and it sounds like, because closure, it seems very black and white. Healing is a lifelong process, and
Mhm.
so to want to heal from that previous relationship or marriage is something that you do continuously. But to close it to me is, I don't know, it puts a lot of pressure and expectations which may not be met.
Well, you didn't know that that was my next question because under do you believe in closure was how does healing happen? So, healing, I do want to talk about that, but you're right. I do think it's lifelong. And I think maybe there are times that do you think that we backslide, like that we
Yeah.
take steps
Snap
back?
back. Sure, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that that's temporary. That one step back doesn't mean that you are now living back, or that you are not growing or evolving.
Mhm.
I think growth is cumulative, but healing for me is giving your body, not just your mind, a new corrective love experience. I
Mhm.
think that's where healing comes. Is it's a somatic, feeling thing. It's not like a logical thing.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right. All right. Well, so that brings me to the 8 different types of breakups. Again, we don't need to go into depth. That's what your book is for. And you
Hmm.
do set this up in your introduction of your book. So why don't we go over, let's start with the big one breakup, the one you
Yeah.
compare all to.
Yeah, this is our first love, or the big one. Usually it's young love. Usually it's our 20s, I mean, maybe high school. I don't know if high school even counts, but it's when you don't have a sense of self. It's when your heart is made of fresh powdered snow. It's your first big imprint. And I think the thing with this is we forget when we play things back from the big one that we're playing it back from who we was then, so we're playing it back through the eyes and experience lenses of a 20-year-old instead of a 51-year-old. So there's a lot of distortion. It's like when you go back to your elementary school and you're like, look at the size of those chairs. Oh my, they're so tiny. I can't believe I sat in that. But when you were in that chair, nothing looked tiny. And so you're playing love back from who you were. And who you were was someone without tools or wisdom when it comes to love. It was just a lot of feelings.
Mhm.
And so we try to trace that poster, and there's a distortion there. So it's not healthy comparing any relationship to the big one.
Yes, 2 thoughts. Well, I think that's the distortion going back to that whole closure conversation.
Hmm.
I think that's probably why it's a bad idea to go back and not move forward. And some people are like, this is my way forward, especially if the closure is from so long ago. It's like, yeah, it's probably going to be distorted and unhealthy to
Hmm.
look at those
Hmm.
strings. But I do want to say, you in your book talk about how your big one was your marriage. And so, do you
Hmm.
feel like at that point, you were talking about wisdom? Do you feel like you just hadn't really, I don't know, when I say the word bloom, but that's not the word I'm looking for. Why do you feel like that was the one that
It,
is
it's a it's a different B word. Boy, I was a boy.
okay? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not bloomed. I was a child. I was unhappy, angry, reactive, controlling, possessive. All the fun things of young love. I also put her on a pedestal, and I didn't care about anything but us and her. And so I made no effort into friendships, into travel, into anything. And so I had no life other than to be with this person. So when she left, the floor dropped out.
Okay, I want to talk about the blindsided breakup.
Yes, this is the breakup that you didn't, I'm going to say you didn't feel coming, because I think we all see it. We just weren't looking. You know what I'm saying? I think
Mhm.
there are hints, even if it feels like it came out of nowhere, you just didn't see them. Maybe you were busy. Maybe you didn't have the lenses to. But yeah, it's the breakup that just kind of came out of nowhere. And now you have emotional whiplash, you know?
Mhm.
So this type of breakup would require focusing on your dysregulated nervous system. It's like you just got into a car accident and you're like, what's going on? I was just married 2 days ago, and now I'm going through, like, all this stuff. It's very fast. It's kind of traumatic. And so foundational, simple things like sleep, water, friendships, support, all of that, yeah, should be at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the next one is the flat soda, which you mean mutual breakup.
Hmm. The relationship that we don't tend to, and then we drift too far. That speaking of drift,
Drift, yeah.
we drift too far to turn back. Where now the chemistry changes, and we see our partner as like a sibling or a roommate,
Mhm.
and the danger with that is it's hard. And I think especially women, when they make a decision, they're done. Like it's hard to convince. I know it's a generalization, but when your feelings change, when you see your partner as kind of like platonic, I don't know if you can get to romance again. I mean, maybe, but it's really hard to.
Mm.
I'm not talking about just chemistry um, fluctuating. I'm talking about going from mouth to nipple. I'm talking about the dynamic of the relationship changing, where you're like, I can't see, I don't want to even kiss this person.
Yeah, absolutely. That all makes sense. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that drift came back up because like I said, I do think that especially people, I don't know, maybe you put too much effort into your work at some point. And so you're like, oh, we were both just career minded and
Hmm.
maybe there was
Hmm.
something here, but then maybe the growth has become too much where you've grown and
Apart.
you're not on the same path. So I don't know. I think that
Hmm.
is so hard and only the individual knows. But I guess I'll summarize and then put a bow on that thought is just like you said, people do give up too early. And I hope that people recognize that sometimes it's not too late, but also there are books like this if it is. So
Yeah, and the title's a little misleading because it
yeah.
sounds like I'm very pro breakup. It sounds like break up now, break up on purpose. But the on purpose is more or less like with intention and to review and take ownership. It's not just to like break up and be irresponsible, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. The next one is the you cheated, you left me for someone else breakup.
Yeah, this is betrayal. This is, and the thing about cheating, I know that someone did something, it may not be your fault. But if you stay in victim mode, like someone did something to me, that is a very powerless state. After letting out all the emotions and feelings, and of course you could be angry, you got to start taking ownership. You were 50% of that. What was your take? Even if it was like, maybe you didn't speak up, maybe you didn't, whatever. That's your piece, and that contributed to the dynamic.
I loved that you acknowledged the power that we can take back from those circumstances of not being a victim, taking the ownership. And that is a huge part of healing, I think, from
Yeah,
that
yeah,
situation.
yeah, yeah,
All right. The next one is the soap opera breakup.
yeah. This is when people are slashing tires and filing for restraining orders.
Yeah.
The 1-2 punch here is not only are you going through breakup and grieving,
Mhm.
but you may also be having to like protect yourself. You may be worried about your safety. You may be looking, over your shoulder all the time, right? Depending on
Mhm.
how toxic the relationship was. If you break up with someone who was abusive or who is controlling and possessive and doesn't want to let you go, that can be dangerous.
Mhm.
You have to like handle it very like with care.
Absolutely. I'm sorry that I laughed at the beginning of that one, but it is true.
It's
I'm like, that
okay.
is that is the worst kind, I guess, for me as a woman is that's just a terrifying experience, especially when you have young kids. I think that that can be you're
Oh
managing
yeah. Yeah, of
kids and then
course.
you're managing the
Yeah.
relationship and then your own
Yeah.
safety. There's so much at play there. So,
Hmm.
but it must be mentioned. All right, the next one is the almost relationship breakup.
Yeah, I love this one. I think people think that your breakup should be tied to how long. So, like, if you're with someone for say 7 years, then it warrants a tough breakup, and if you were with someone for 3 months, then you should be over that person really fast, and that's not true. It's about the intensity, and so the thing about an almost breakup is your secondary loss. You are not only losing the 3-4 months or, all the time you spent dating this person, but all the things you guys talked about, baby names and the overlap in design and houses and, the future that you wanted, the potential of what this could be, that is gone. And sometimes that's more devastating than the actual 3 months you spent with this person.
Yeah. Or, gosh, I feel like I highlighted that. Let me see if I could flip to it really fast. I think sometimes we'll dwell in that type of breakup because the what if is too much to bear, because we just think that we're saying goodbye to so many possibilities of us, or maybe like a better us. Maybe we think this romanticized version of ourselves, we're never going to get to that part of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
outside of that person. And so I think that we can mourn that too, which again, I think that within all of these, you can take back power through healing, but also through processing with friends, processing with therapists, listening to conversations like this. Throughout your book, you have stories that you share within
Mm-hmm.
each chapter,
Yeah.
just so people know that they're not alone, because you say, which I guess I'll let you say, but you say feeling like you're the only one is a super isolating experience.
Yeah. I mean, we're just not meant to do this alone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know who struggles with this type of breakup the most is people who are, maybe 30s, 40s, and they're ready for like the one, the big one. They've done a lot of work. They finally feel like they've met the person they want to build a life with. It's short lived, that person, because it's lined with a ticking clock, uh, desperation, hope, all of the stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you continue to do the work, show up as your best self, and again, who knows what your love life will continue to look like. But if you can get joy in other facets of your life, I don't know, it's not manifesting that love will come, but I just think that's the best that we can continue to do. And then time's going to pass anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
why would we not
Mm-hmm.
want to pursue the best version of ourselves, regardless if we're with someone else? We should just
Yeah.
want that for ourselves.
Well, the reason why my other book, Single on Purpose, hit a pulse is because I think people now, they're okay with being single more than ever. It doesn't define who they are. Of course, they would rather, most people would rather love someone and be in a partnership, um, or if you're not monogamous, many partnerships, whatever. But to be alone with self is more accepted and embraced now more than ever. So
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's not to minimize people's desires to be with a partner, but I think continuing to be the best version of you. I know that's so
hmm
cliche, but that
hmm
is a worthwhile endeavor in itself. So, had to
and
be said.
ongoing, never ends.
Ongoing. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, we have two more. We have
hmm
the breakup that never ends.
Yes. Round two, round three. I always say if someone says to me, a client, should I get back together with this person? My question is, what's going to be different? And it can't be, a hairstyle or because time has passed or because you have abs now. It has to be internal change. It has to be what I call secondary change that's irreversible. People going on inner journeys, coming back different because you have to change the dynamic of the relationship, not just, you just can't miss someone and suddenly it's going to work this time.
Yes, absolutely. All right. And then the last one is the D word, which is divorce.
Yeah. Divorce, the big one. This one, sometimes it's not the big one, but it's complicated because sometimes with divorce comes children, shared property, a lot of layers more so than the quote unquote normal breakup.
Well, and then with divorce, in certain ways,
Identity.
yeah, well, identity, but I think a lot of facets of these eight, or I guess seven others that you mentioned, could be a part of divorce. So there's so many things that we're
Mm.
juggling, like the
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
almost
Yeah.
relationship, the breakup that never ends, like maybe it was
Yeah.
a divorce that was long drawn
Yeah.
out.
It could
So,
be you could tap into a few of these buckets. It's not
yeah,
just you have to pick one. There's a few.
sure.
Yeah, sure,
Yes, yes,
absolutely.
yes. And that's why you say in the introduction to read through them as you've written them, because you may pull out those different elements from each one,
hmm
not to overlook that that might be a part of your story, because there could be tools in here to help through or
Yeah.
whatever circumstance
Yeah.
you're going through. Yeah. John, do you have a final word of wisdom or encouragement that you want to leave listeners just in this conversation and or through your book?
Just the message that you have the richest soil for growth after any breakup, after any relationship expires, and to take advantage of that instead of trying to find love instantly. Take a beat, examine what happened, what was your responsibility, what was your ownership, how do you want to, like you said, become a better version of you. And that growth soil will calcify if you just go find other love real fast.
Absolutely. Well, John, where can listeners connect with you online and grab a copy of this book?
The book anywhere, Target, Amazon, wherever you buy books, and you can find me at The Angry Therapist across social.
Okay, perfect. Well, as we wrap things up here, what does it mean to you to live with clear intentions?
Mm. I'm gonna say to be honest with self, to be honest with myself. I mean that that's pretty much it. To me, my intentions can't be clear if I'm not honest with myself. So I think everything starts there.
Do you feel like you ever go back on that? Do you feel like that's hard to be honest with yourself?
Yeah, I think we have moments where we are dishonest with self and maybe not even realize it, and then we take a beat and we're like, oh, this doesn't feel honest to me. Maybe we're seeking validation, approval, something external.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's something that we kind of struggle with um, throughout our lives. I think we get better as
Mhm.
we are more comfortable with self, to be honest with self, but it definitely requires a journey for sure.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Well, John, thank you so much for this conversation today. I know that it will be helpful to my listeners, and I just appreciate you writing this book. Like I said, 15 years too late, but I'm also glad to have it now.
Thank you
So
so much
thanks
for
for
having
your
me. Yeah.